Is that better?
Much better, much better.
Awesome.
Andres, this might be the most in frame you've ever been.
I know. I can go.
Perfectly centered. I like it.
I can try to lean back a little more. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not used to it.
Yeah.
Going in and out of frame.
Okay, super. So we are live. The RMTP settings have taken us live.
Going in and out of frame.
Oh,
Okay, super.
that's
So we're
fun.
live. Hi. So everybody is live. I'm just going to get started with letting in more people. Claudia is here. Kale is here. Okay, and about time that we get started. Okay, welcome you all to the Baseline Show. I'm Samrat Kishore, and I do this every week, Wednesdays at noontime EST, 6 p.m. Central European Time, and 9:30 p.m. in India. This is the official office hours of Baseline Protocol, and we talk to global leaders about data sharing trends and data synchronization, and of course, everything Baseline Protocol. Today happens to be a very exciting show. We have the team from we have Ryan from Provide, who will be presenting some real products which they've created using the Baseline Protocol, and we're also going to be talking about talking to some TSC candidates who have nominated themselves or have been nominated for the TSC elections. So that's on the agenda for today. Majority of the time is going to be on the demos. I'm going to start with addressing one pertinent issue. Let me address the elephant in the room, which is about the last week's show. So we had to cancel the last week's show because of certain issues. Let me take a stance here and say that there was some communication to two of the TSC members and Oasis in copy or otherwise, and then because of that communication, we had to do some internal reviews, and those reviews of course take time, and that includes, by the way, consulting the legal counsel of Oasis. So all of that was going on, and we had very little time. So all of these events and the proximity to the show just prompted me to eventually go ahead and push the show. We met just the next day, happened to be the TSC meeting, so we all met and we took some decisions. We reviewed the whole situation. We took some decisions, and we also took upon ourselves an action item to create an SOP around certain situations, around the trigger which caused it, around the communications SOP, which could have been followed. So yeah, it's all good, and we have the Provide demos now. So I'm super excited about it. And before we get into the demos, because I'm sure all of us are going to be overwhelmed with the demos, and we'll be pouring in questions, I'm going to address the TSC candidates first. So let's talk to, who do we pick up first? Any volunteers? Mark?
Are you going to have me go ahead and go first?
Yeah, why not?
So what, as far as candidacy for TSC?
Yeah, so just take 2 or 3 minutes, introduce yourself, what you've been doing. So your whole candidate statement and maybe your vision for the next TSC.
Okay, well, for the past year, I've been chairing the outreach committee, basically forming and shaping the message around Baseline as far as, what it is, what it isn't, and what it can do for you. Really making the distinction between Baseline, the Baseline approach, as well as opposed to a full blockchain implementation. I've been a veteran of 13 proofs of concepts, 4 MVPs, and 2 in pre-production as far as blockchain projects. All of them, running into a lot of the same problems that as far as implementation and activating it. Really, just really covering that last mile. when it came to scaling. That's where pretty much where we ran into it, and arrived at almost the same conclusion that a lot of other people had come into that had worked in blockchain, to say, hey, maybe we're going about this the wrong way, and the middleware approach is the more optimal solution there, because we're not ripping and replacing anything. We're not requiring people to have these expensive implementations and buy a lot of software and rip and replace a lot of stuff that works such as it is now. So you can use your existing systems. We're just basically filling that gap. When it comes to, if you need to share data with people that are unwilling or unable to share their data, this is a way that you can still realize your business process. So what we want to do is really articulate, this is what it does in a real world application. So, which is a two-way street. We're not only speaking and telling the masses, but we're also listening to them and saying, this is what is important to us. This is what we want. And and everybody wants something as quick and as simple and as cheap as possible. So to that end, a lot of the outreach content that we've had, we pretty much, myself as well as a lot of the members of our team have really all have a hand in putting them together. We were able to pressure test a lot of this messaging in recent conferences, and we have a really good message to put out there. So but again, that requires not only the really exciting stuff and the fluff, but also really, how does it all work? How do I put this together? What does it take? So,
Absolutely.
and that requires the technical aspect, of course. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, I would like to add to that, what Mark just said. I think you've been the one who's been championing the concept of, I want to get baseline next Friday. What do I do?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have to give that to you, definitely.
Because we do get a lot. People are like, this is great. This is awesome. How can I get, and say, how can I get baselined and stuff? And so that's what we want to give them, the short, straight path to just achieve that synchronization. We can talk about tokenization. We can talk about confidential computing, in a couple of layers after that. But first, let's achieve that universal state of consistency, that provable, consistency between that root of trust instead of that single source of truth. And it's not something that we're assuring you or attesting you. No, we are proving it.
Right, absolutely. Awesome. So we have to move on, give a fair chance to others as well. And we have 4 candidates today to talk to, and one of them is Ryan. So next up, let me invite Kale Teeter. Kale, would you like to go ahead and talk about your vision, your contributions? Awesome.
Yeah, sure. So I've been working in the space for almost a decade now on blockchain stuff. I think about 7 years here at Microsoft. We've been working on this, and been part of starting the EEA when that started. Been part of Baseline with John and all the team when this started. Super awesome that from an enterprise perspective. I think the big things that from last year, obviously like the run of the mill stuff, like the grants and things like that. Want to continue to keep supporting the community in that way. I work pretty close with the Ethereum Foundation as well, Dan and Taz and the group over there. So I kind of have tentacles into like different arms here to kind of help promote what they're also looking for, like from EF standpoint, but also the twist for the enterprise and like what the Baseline community is looking for here too. So I think I'm in a unique spot to kind of do that. The other thing I do quite a bit, obviously, because I work at a big company like Microsoft, is working with ISVs, right? So a lot of times, like for instance, Provide's a good example of this. We work pretty closely with folks like this to make sure that the infrastructure is in a good spot to be able to be single clicked. So when people say yeah to Mark's point, like, hey, I want to do this, like right away, how do I do this? Well, here's a stack, right? And here's how we could run that stack from a technology standpoint. Obviously, there's a business aspect of that as well, and like figuring out how that works with them is another piece. So I think that's where probably I'm more comfortable, and I kind of like contribute a lot more to on the actual implementation side. Something also I've been like talking to Andreas and others about is some of the real world stuff that we need for these enterprises, like the NIST certification stuff. So I've kind of taken that up, and I want to push that through here the next year, is to be able to make sure that these protocols and like the encryption algorithms that we're using are like can be done, right? Because if we recommend all these things and then there's like this one little piece that like blocks this big enterprise from doing it, it kind of pisses me off, right? So that's the thing that I kind of want to make sure we unblock as we go through there, right? So I think I have some things that I can do there to help move that forward, along with a lot of help, from Microsoft and otherwise. Yeah, other than that, I really enjoy the baseline community. I echo what Mark says. Like, I've been working on POCs and implementations of this stuff for years, and there's a lot of dead bodies there. I think there was a lot of learning there, but it's culminated in like what we're seeing here today to say, I need to be practical about what I can improve here, how this actually works for my business, as opposed to standing up a bunch of technology for technology's sake.
Absolutely. Yeah. So enough of tech talk, let's get down to business and break that down for everybody. Awesome. Any closing thoughts on the vision for the next TSC?
No, I think going forward, obviously, we want to continue to support the folks who are building in this space. As I mentioned, the ISVs and the partners who are building stacks inside of here. I want to be a big part of that, making sure that stuff runs awesome, obviously on Azure or otherwise, and then also, supporting these initiatives to make sure it's real, like the encryption algorithm things and pieces like that. Probably even into the identity piece a bit. That's where I really want to kind of focus the next year, is like making sure that we have all those blockers removed,
Right. Awesome. That is excellent. So we have limited time today for the candidates, but I'm sure there are others as well. And the eligible voters everybody have got an email with all the candidates and their respective statements. So they can go through that. I'm going to pick up one more candidate today, Manik, next one. But there are others as well, you are like Sonal, and of course Andreas. So we're going to pick everybody else, in the following show, and myself. So yeah, let's for now hear what Manik has to say about his work, and I'm sure, Manik, you're having a good time building what you're building. And what's your vision about the next TSC, the incoming TSC for the next year? And let's hear it. Let's hear you while you're on camera, because we also want to see your face. And you don't show up on YouTube if you're not on camera.
Hi, Samrat.
Hey.
Actually, I'm.
It's okay. It's fine. It's just go ahead with your statement.
Okay. So yeah, thank you so much for the platform. So yeah, I've been part of Baseline CodeDev since 2021. After you introduced me to the community back in 2020. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, ever since then, I've been taking up small and big projects. So the first thing that we did was with the Baseline Battleship game. That was like the Hello World thing for Baseline, for anybody who is looking to actually utilize and understand how they can be baselined, the very basics of it. So after that, I was contributing with the tree trunk project. And recently I've been working with the SRI implementation, which is going to be the next reference implementation for BRI, which is under BRI 3.
Right.
And in terms of my next thing that I want to do with the Baseline community is taking up that POC that Luis was doing with the EDDS integration with MetaMask. So once done with SRI, so probably I'll be working on that. So that was regarding the contributions with what I have made. So along with this, I'll keep reviewing all the PRs and whatever is being pushed to the different branches before those are getting merged to the main. So that is also the CodeDev responsibility. So given a chance that I get elected for the TSC, so first and foremost thing is that I feel many people are getting attracted towards the ZKP, and some projects have already been happening. But I guess there's a lot of more scope in there. A few days back, Vitalik was mentioning in his interview. So probably we need to integrate more and proceed more on that front. So that is going to be a learning curve for me also. And I'll be promoting more on that. And alongside, I have good connections with some companies, like some big IT companies. So I'll be, I'll keep promoting baseline with them, even if I'm not selected, but I'll keep doing that, being a valued member of the community. So yeah, that's all from my side.
That's excellent, Manik. And yeah, you rightly pointed out, even if you don't make it to the TSC, please do keep contributing as an integral part of the core devs team. Thank you so much for that. With that, let's move on to Ryan, the man of the hour. Ryan, over to you.
Samrat, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm glad we could overcome the issues of last week and really come here today. Brief introduction of myself. My name is Ryan Fleischmann, and I'm the SAP architect at proVIDE. Prior to joining proVIDE, I worked through many different SAP implementations as a developer and integrator. And when I came to know more about baseline, it was like this aha moment, because it fit so many of the different challenges I would often see inside of SAP environments. So as a member of the TSC, I of course would have some opinions towards preferencing to a BRI1, but I'd also give perspective as well as SAP in general to help out the community, you really build towards that kind of enterprise grade solution. So without saying much further, I'm going to jump right into some slides, and thereafter we'll get into a demo. And this will kind of reflect on some of the open source work I've done already with proUBC and how that integrates to the PRVD stack, as well as Shuttle. We'll look at Shuttle here closer to the end.
Super. You know what, Ryan, just keep it very lame and very simple. And even if people are not caught up to what's PRVD and what's Shuttle, sort of maybe spend a couple of minutes explaining people, because we could use this video as a reference for next, for future sharing, etc.
Yeah. If I could share my screen here a moment.
Oh yeah, sure. I'll just enable it.
Okay, here we go. And I'll get into these slides here first. So if we look at this. So we're going to talk about synchronize everything, even IDOCs from your SAP system, and lay out a quick agenda of what are we going to talk about here, right? One is a very brief crash course on SAP, IDOCs, and ABAP. I know I said a bunch of weird words there, but we'll get through that. Why would we baseline IDOCs in particular? And then the last part is how proUBC, PRVD stack, and Shuttle simplify that ZK proof generation for IDOCs. Looking at some basic terms, many folks on the call may know, but SAP is the primary system of record for finance and supply chain for most Fortune 500 companies, as well as government agencies and large-scale private enterprises. I for one have done SAP work in each of those kind of environments. ABAP is the programming language used inside of SAP. We won't get so much into the ABAP code today, but proUBC is written in an ABAP. And these other terms, if you're in the integration space, you're familiar with them. One is EDI, electronic data interchange. That's a global legacy standard format for business documents. And because they're asynchronous, they're often kind of slow and kind of weird to work with. But you see businesses prefer EDI quite often because they're very resilient processes built around them. And of course, you have APIs as well, like REST APIs. That's real-time data transfer between systems. And the subject we're going to really focus on is IDOCs. IDOCs are known as the go-to EDI standard of SAP. And if you looked inside of any SAP system today, the IDOC would really be the #1 source of traffic for business documents of different business agreements going across customers and partners, across different multi-party scenarios. So the few of the challenges you might see with IDOCs is, once you send that IDOC, it can be hard to know if your business partner has used that information from the IDOC successfully. And IDOCs, the business process around purchase order, invoice, ASN. That's a very complex data structure that can come about with different line items and due dates and manufacturing processes all built into there. And when you have different middlewares across different environments, it becomes, you kind of lose your way of how sure you are about data. As well as, just dealing with IDOCs. Once we get a quick look at what an IDOC looks like, it's kind of intimidating to deal with. So if we think about baseline, baseline really defines a standard that says, hey, we could use zero knowledge proofs to meet those challenges that we see in IDOCs. And furthermore, if we think about ZKPs, going into Ethereum, that it opens up a new world of exciting, Web3 based business opportunities that could go around such data, for lending, borrowing, enterprise DeFi. And so we're going to look a little closer at PRVD stack, proUBC, and Shuttle as tools to simplify and standardize that use of ZK proofs with SAP and other enterprise systems. And that helps meet conformance to that baseline standard. So an SAP person may ask, well, why would I ZK proof an IDOC? What are we really after here? And I go to these three things, three distinct things. One is on the business process management and supply chain management side, is thinking about it's immensely valuable to have verifiably in sync data between partners, knowing for certain that that you're working with on the same bit of data about your purchasing process, your sales process, supply chain, all of that. I like to refer to it as a BPI squared, right? The baseline protocol integration meets the business process intelligence together, right? It's really augmenting those processes, coming together. Another topic that I believe is of great interest to our community is thinking about tokenization and the other Web3 based use cases. So that's things like on-chain finance, invoice factoring, and if the time and cost efficiency savings that you see, in the accounts receivable, accounts payable, and cash management, and other remarkable things you could do to incorporate Web3 business models as well. But doing it with the privacy mechanisms enshrined that you need to work with public blockchains, so that you're not dealing with sensitive data getting out there. That's a huge part of what baseline helps provide to us. And a third one, this is a much more common interest of just SAP landscapes as well. But when you have such high volume of data, right, you eventually have to archive it. But long term, you may need to verify the data that you're holding from the past is correct. And this is where I think the transaction finality of Ethereum is incredibly valuable, right? So that even if you have IDOCs, from several years ago, if you baseline them, you'd be able to verify that the data that you had is still correct. So that's a bit of why, but how can I do that? And the challenge that we see specific in the SAP domain is that, zero knowledge, it can be a specialty unto itself. And, if we want to bring that into SAP, there's a major need to simplify this in a way that's going to be digestible to an SAP integrator, especially if it's going to jump into something as complex as IDOCs. So here's where we're going to talk about solutions that, Provide is involved with, both as commercial and open source as well. So on the open source front, we have the PRVD stack, and these are a set of APIs that Provide has donated to the PRVD project as open source, that are APIs for zero knowledge and conformance to baseline protocol, as well as Web3 integration, integration to different smart contracts and digital wallets very generally. proUBC, that's the work that I've done in ABAP. This is an open source ABAP SDK to the PRVD stack, right? Making that possible for the SAP system to, initiate baseline protocol messages, but it also gives the SAP system some capabilities into digital wallets and smart contracts that it did not have before. And lastly, Shuttle. Shuttle is our commercial offering, and it's a low no-code designer that helps you really easily define the how, who, and when that zero knowledge proof propagates out. And as a SaaS application, since it's in the cloud, you could easily integrate it to other enterprise platforms like ServiceNow. We'll focus on SAP for now, but hey, it's time for the demo. Let's jump into our SAP dev environment. And if I do a quick look around here, I talked about iDocs, right? So a typical SAP user, when they jump into SAP and want to look at iDocs, they may see a big overview screen like this, and this is where you'd see hundreds or thousands of different messages come through. Here in this test system, we have this demo iDoc, this internal order iDoc. We've tested this with other standard SAP iDocs, but this is the one we'll use for demo purposes today. All right, so this, to give you an idea, right, like this is the kind of data out of an enterprise system that we're trying to baseline. So before we do
Brian,
that, yes.
can I stop you for a second? I think not everybody is familiar with what an internal order is. So where an internal order is used and how that might be helpful to set the context, like why do I need an internal order?
Yeah. So this iDoc would represent some kind of business document out of SAP, right? So if we looked more closely at some of this data, so you have an order ID, you have some text that goes along with this, some information about profit center, other things just related to the business process, very generally to the iDoc. That's there. So, but to take the focus back to the demo, let's go into Shuttle, and we'll start up the work group configuration. So work group is, really setting that boundary of what business partners are involved with the ZKP that's being shared. Since today is only a few days out from Halloween, let's simulate a scenario where I have a business like this Global Bike Incorporated business. SAP OGs might know this as a test data system. Let's say there's some kind of business arrangement between Global Bike and Mars Candy Company, right? And this is just our sample work group. If we click next, this is the very beginnings of that onboarding ceremony between Shuttle, SAP through proUBC and our decentralized world, right? So if we go to this step, this is Vault, and this is where we are using or creating a digital wallet. Click Continue. Next, we define a system. So here I'm going to select SAP as my given system. Shout out to Azure. We are running this SAP system off of Azure, and we just need to fill in a few details about connecting to this SAP system. So if I specify that endpoint URL and give some credentials, okay, we're successfully authenticated to SAP. Click Continue, and we'll select a domain model. So domain models, this is our very general terminology for different schemas such as iDoc. So if we look at this and say internal order, that's the kind of data we want to baseline here today. And we do have to specify something about the primary key. So yeah, we've brought in all of that data, the metadata of the iDoc, and that's going to be available for us in our workflow configuration. We click Save and Continue. And at this step, we're defining our networks, right? So a few notes on the kind of network we have. We have PRVD network as our privacy-focused layer 3. We have Polygon as our Ethereum layer 2 for just general performance and cost scalability, and the exciting other exciting things available through Polygon. And of course, what we're after is transaction finality to Ethereum itself. So that's our layer 3, 2, and 1. So the workflow is actually deployed to the layer 3, but then rolls up and goes straight to Ethereum. We agree to this privacy policy and say save and continue. There's a step here about onboarding provide payments. This is just provides fiat onboarding as a service for enterprises. We can skip over this for now, but we'll just continue here. And at this stage, we have a review of our Shuttle onboarding setup, just very generally. We can just click finish onboarding. And we're in betas yet, so it occasionally may have an issue there. Let's refresh the page. Everything should be ready to go yet. Great, success. So what we see happen is over here in SAP, we have a new entry to this table. And this is, the very secure mechanism by which, like I said, we've married up the SAP credential, to these decentralized credentials that we're using for baseline and for integration to Ethereum and EVMs, very broadly. So before we get into propagating a baseline protocol message, we have to set up a workflow. And this could get more advanced as time goes on, but we're going to create just a very simple workflow to just, create a ZK proof. So let's just call this workflow, create order. And once we have the definition of this workflow, we'll add one work step. And we'll just call this the IDOC sent work step. And a bit of the information that we saw earlier, that internal order IDOC, we're going to reference this domain model. And this is what makes life easy for the SAP integrator, because here we can just say we want a general consistency ZK proof for baseline, and we'll say yes, we'll require finality. We'll click save. And once that's saved, we can deploy.
Ryan, can you maybe, for those who are not 100% familiar with finality, or whether you need finality or not, can you comment on that for a second?
Yeah, so finality would refer to this idea that we'd want to get the ZK proof ultimately all the way to the layer 1, right? Since PRVD is a layer 3, right? You technically wouldn't necessarily always need transaction finality all the way to the layer 1 where you most desire it. When we select requires finality, what we're really asking for in the configuration we're deploying is say, make this information go back to the layer 1 ultimately. So that's our workflow deployment there, and that went successfully, right? So that's ready for the SAP system to start using. Right now we have an empty console, but we'll see this fill in just a moment. If we go back to SAP, right, let's say we have these IDOCs that are getting processed out of the SAP system, and we want to create a batch job that will create that ZKP propagation. That's essentially what this script will do. This is one of the programs that's kind of bundled into proUBC for demonstration purposes, but it could be a production program too. So we filled in some identifying information about that IDOC, like the specific IDOC number of that EDI transmission. If I click execute here, there you go. If we look into this console, you can see way down here in this little piece here, the proof, right? Here's our ZK proof of that internal order, right? And what I just demonstrated essentially was a simplified way of creating a ZK proof from an IDOC out of SAP. Getting more into the code of it, right? This is what a developer might see if they're trying to debug or troubleshoot. You know, this is where I spend a lot of time every day is going through this. But here's our send protocol message and a bit of what ABAP code looks like. You know, kind of marshaling data around day to day. For folks who are ABAP developers or have that skill set, you can check out the source code over here at github.com/provide platform proUBC. You can clone it into any SAP system as an open source repo. And once you have that set up, you can use Shuttle to, you know, onboard, you know, recreate the same scenario. If you don't want to use Shuttle, you could also use the PRVD CLI to do the same. But Shuttle is, you know, the commercial offering that we offer to make that just life really easy for the integrators to, you know, work with baseline, you know, very easily overall. So yeah, that's all about the tools that are there. I think I covered most everything in there. Any questions from the audience about, you know, what was shown overall?
Hey, Ryan. Yeah, I have awesome stuff. Can you maybe talk a second how you would like integrate proUBC in an SAP environment? I mean, you showed like Z tables, and people are a little bit familiar with SAP. Know that these Z tables are the extension capabilities that SAP provides for customization of an SAP implementation. So it may help to understand how proUBC fits into SAP and how that, you know, via Shuttle then connects to the stack. That's all.
I'm glad you brought that up, Andreas, because this gets into like, how do you deliver the proUBC repo into the SAP environment? So we use ABAP Git for that, right? So if I go back inside this SAP system, and if I open up the SAP GUI, ABAP Git is a you know, a community effort, you know, that's put together by different SAP developers, and you know, really, it's as simple as if you were working with developing it, you could make changes and stage them, right? Or if you wanted to like pull in the latest source code from it, you could pull the repo as well. So it's a pretty simple setup overall to do that. And you know, many ABAP developers are, well, not all of them are familiar with ABAP Git, but it tends to be a high priority for you know, the IT departments to get ABAP Git up and running, so that they're able to work with this. So yeah, just doing the pull from the main or dev branch would, you know, bring that data, you know, back into that SAP system.
Right. So through SAP NetWeaver, right?
Yes. Yep. And that you know, installing the repo that way, you know, that brings in all the objects and activates them. There are a few other configurations that once you bring in proUBC into that SAP landscape, to ensure that there's a add certificate so that you can connect to the PRVD stack itself, and you know, opening up that REST endpoint that we used, that Shuttle used for onboarding those credentials in, right? That's needed as well. So we'll have some more documentation, you know, published. I've been working on it like constantly because I've been, you know, setting up proUBC in different SAP environments for demos and development purposes. You know, just making that an easily repeatable process for SAP users and their basis administrators that help support you know, things like proUBC in their SAP environment.
And SAP integrators, right? I mean, that's
SAP integrators, yeah.
Right, because that will allow then SAP that can be used for then to easily integrate in baselines, in a baseline stack on, so you can like baseline to SAP systems, which is, given the very often highly disparate SAP landscape, even within one company, an important thing, because that, as you know, there's a lot of stuff that is like hacked together in
Yeah.
in those heterogeneous environments.
Yeah, because different companies will acquire each other, right? And just because they acquire a different company doesn't mean that they're on the same VPN necessarily, or have the same established connectivity, right? So something like Baseline is a really clever way of helping facilitate an integration, a verification of data without having to go through a VPN, like fully trusted, right? It's a more of a trustless like setup, which is really cool.
Yeah, especially when you're then pulling data into for the month end close, you have it in FICO, or you're using SAP Business Warehouse to run reports. Now you can basically add that stuff to that reporting, to that accounting, to ensure that things are valid.
Absolutely. And, you're thinking about that tokenization, like talking point, right? One thing that personally interested me a lot was this Chainlink and Deco did a proof of concept of under collateralized lending, right, with Teller, right? And I think if the use of ZKP to do that under collateralized lending is fits perfectly into the third-party logistics use case, right? Where you have a guy in a truck, and it would be great if we could use DeFi to help that guy get some money, some stable coin to put gas in his truck, so that he can serve his customers that are both SAP users but haven't paid yet. You could, that's some of the possibilities that are born out of something like this. So this is a general toolkit that makes ZKP and Baseline really easy for enterprises, but I think it also introduces some very exciting capabilities for entrepreneurs to work in this ecosystem and build those Web3 services for enterprises that they're looking for.
Awesome. This is exciting stuff, Ryan. Thank you so much for the demo. There was one interesting question which came on YouTube. Actually, Jack has been doing a great job on answering the questions, but
Yep.
there was one which was on building SaaS platforms using proUBC. So would you elaborate a little more on that? Because we see that the response is yes, you can, but which kind of platforms and whether creating a new platform is, I mean, that's something aspirational, but any of the existing platforms, can they start using it? Just name them.
Yeah, I mean, we just got into delivering proUBC as a product, but like as I mentioned in that 3PL, like that's one kind of use case specific DApp or enterprise service that you could get further into. Really, what I think it does is as well, and this I didn't have time to demo quite as yet. Additionally to enabling Baseline with SAP, proUBC makes it such that ABAP code can call a smart contract. This is something that was largely missing up until the arrival of proUBC to have that sort of facility. I mean, there's other connectors that folks have built as well that do that same thing, but proUBC is the first open source implementation of ABAP code to a smart contract, right? And we took the idea that you commonly see in smart contract integrations of taking an ABI file and being able to go through an RPC, and Chain is that provide that PRVD microservice that enables the calling smart contracts. So coming up in the next few weeks here, before November 18th, we have our entry to the Chainlink Hackathon, where we're going to demonstrate more about the calling the Chainlink price feeds to update the currency rates inside of SAP, right? Because in addition to the many things SAP does, it has to manage different foreign currencies, right? So our entry there is going to be pulling in price feeds for different fiat currencies through Chainlink price feeds, as well as digital assets, right? So that you could, if we live in a world where you have Ether or Bitcoin or some other digital asset that's a reserve currency that's different what we have now. Yeah, I would be preference to say like the Chainlink price feed would be the best, source of truth on what those prices should be. And the cool thing is, like, if you have baseline, you could stay in perfect synchronization to your business partners of what exchange rate or price you're using, right? Because even today with normal enterprises, whether one euro is $1.05 or $1.06 in USD makes a tremendous impact of millions of dollars to enterprises. So
we're going to take away business of the banks.
And the banks too. Yeah. So it'll be, that's going to be fascinating. So if folks can stay tuned there, if folks want to learn more about how to use proUBC, they can always reach out to me at Provide Services. And of course, if I have the privilege to be part of the baseline TSC, would be working with the group to share more about, what was shown and offered here and regardless of if I'm a TSC or not, I'd offer that, but I'd look forward to that opportunity just as well.
Super. And yeah, thank you so much for that notion as well. Even if you don't make it, please do keep contributing to the baseline community. We need more builders, and we need everybody to join and take baseline to the next stage. Awesome. So do you have any more demos planned for us? We have some time in the show.
So I don't, but I'll give some teasers to some other ones. I know Dave and at another time we'll walk through Provide Sync, which is our ServiceNow integration. That's a product that we created in preparation for the Bank United integration. That if folks who are familiar with the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance Business Readiness Report, that was reported there. Kyle also has a really interesting update on a test suite for the PRVD stack generally. That's mind-blowing. I don't have the skills to do that demo, but we'll see that another time here soon. Yeah, that's like I said, keep your eyes peeled for the next couple weeks here for our Chainlink hackathon entry. And yeah, I just would love to share more about proUBC another time.
Yeah, all the best for that. Okay, any other questions from the people on the show today? For Ryan, for Jack? Okay, I think there are none. So this has been fantastic. Thank you again. So since we have more time left on the show, let me quickly call upon, will that be okay if I call upon more candidates to talk about their vision? Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
go for it.
Let's do that. We have Keith. Keith just joined in, and today he's at a different location, I believe. So Keith, let's have you talk a little more about your statement, your candidate statement for the TSC elections and your vision for the next TSC.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Keith Salzman. I believe I submitted my statement. I'm not sure where the statements posted.
Yeah, statements have gone out to everybody who's eligible to vote on email. But this is your time on the show where you could talk about, people who really relate to you. What you've done, your introduction, your pitch, your elevator pitch to the voters.
Vote for me. That's it. Yeah, so I mean, I encourage you to go read the statement. It's not long. It's like 3 or 4 statement or 3 or 4 sentences that kind of clearly explain where I stand, but I can just give from my unspoken point of view here. So I've been part of Baseline not so long now, maybe 6 or 7 months officially, and then maybe 4 or 5 before that. I've spent most of the time, just helping in any way possible, whether that be with the team on the roadmap or trying to interpret what some of the other TSC members have decided and are saying in directions for our technical efforts. Recently a maintainer as well, so looking through code that is being submitted through PRs, working on the SRI BRI3, the simple reference implementation most recently, as well as other baseline adjacent, ZKP adjacent, ZKVM adjacent technologies that are all right in the baseline. So I'm usually heavily involved in the technical effort, but I think the platform that I stand on, the most important, and the platform that I stand on is simply just that, everybody should be able to get involved, and nobody should hinder one another in their involvement. And that's just the base rule that we should all abide by, and that's simply it. And I'll do my best to make sure that that is the future of Baseline. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, so I think I'll reserve the other candidates for the next show, which we're going to have at the same time next Wednesday. Any parting thoughts, anyone, before we come to the end of today's show? Silence is golden. Okay, I have just one last thing. There was tons of things said on Twitter last week, but one thing particularly stuck with me, which was challenging the grant system of Baseline. I think that is something which is a totally no-go zone. Guys, please try and understand the nature of this project. It's extremely important for all of us to understand. Anybody who's following Baseline show or following Baseline in general should understand the nature of this project and all parties involved. If you challenge the grants program, you're challenging the TSC, you're challenging Oasis, you're challenging PGB and whatnot, all our sponsors. So best is to go read. Everything is public. All our votes, all our comments are all public. You can go review it yourself. In the interest of everybody, what we could also do is, because we are getting a lot of traction, we got a lot of new people joining us, so we could do a refresher. I'm personally very keen to do that. We could do a refresher, and Chet has gladly agreed to come on one of the shows whenever we find a suitable time slot. So we're going to slot in Chet from Oasis, and we're also going to talk about everything that governs Baseline, how this open source project came into being, what all documentations, what all bylaws govern it, how the TSC is formed, and so on and so forth. So look out for that show as well. And
Shamrock, can I also add a point to that? I didn't see any specific posts. I choose to ignore them, which is a good sign that we're busy. But regarding the grants program, we definitely don't want to do that, because as we are wrapping up our 2022 grant year, we are reporting back to the Ethereum Foundation, reporting back to Consensus, and requesting our next set of grant donations. And we need our grant funds to allow our core devs, outreach teammates, and others to develop, attend events, and do this open source work. So if you ever have questions, feel free to personally reach out to me, because I am managing those grant funds, and I am trying very hard to ensure that we get funding for years to come, and hopefully we'll get even more each year. So just want to mention that here.
So that's critical. It's important for our sustainability. So definitely really important area for us. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you all for making it. And I had a good time on the demos. I'm sure people who are watching us and who will watch us in future will also find this valuable. Thank you all. Cheers. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.